Hi guys, welcome back to iFashi. In today's tutorial, we'll be teaching us how to make this beautiful dress that you're seeing on your screen. We'll take us through how to draft the dress, how to sew it, and how you can also achieve these beautiful pearl designs we have on the dress. Here is the result of the one we made in this tutorial. So if this is something you're interested in, let's get right into it. Here's the pattern paper that we'll be drafting on, and here is the Ankara fabric that we'll be using. And this is the black fabric that we'll use to get the black design on for the pearls, and these are the two sizes of pearls that we'll be working with. So now I'll keep this aside and start the drafting. The first thing I'll do on my pattern paper is to come down with 0.5 inch on the top of my paper. That will give me the straight line that I will use as my shoulder line. On this shoulder line, I'll start taking all of my measurements downwards from there. Now I'll place my tape on that shoulder line and get my bust line out first. From my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. So I'll mark that point out, and I also get the under bust, which is the 13 inches. Still placing my tape on the shoulder line, I'll take 13 inches for my under bust, and the next line I'll also take is the half length, the front waist line. So my front waist line is 17 inches. I'll go ahead and mark it, placing my tape on my shoulder line. I take 17 inches. After marking out these three lines, I'll go ahead and mark a straight line on top of the lines and label them so that we'll know what each lines are for. So we have our under bust line, our bust point, and our shoulder line on the top. The next is to get out our hip line and the full length of the dress. So I'll come down from my waistline, which is this half length line, by 9 inches to get out my hip line point. So after marking out that 9 inches, I'll mark a straight line there and label it the hip line. I'll go ahead and join my paper because the length I'll be using for this dress is 38 inches. I want it to be very short. So you can take your measurements and determine where you want the dress to stop. So from the top of my paper, I marked 38 inches, and I'll draw a straight line on that 38 inches and label it the full length line. Now after marking out all these lines, we have our full length line, the hip line, the under bust, the waist, the bust and shoulder lines out. So the remaining line we need to get out is our chest line before we start taking our measurements. So I'll go upwards from my bust point by 2 inches to get my chest line. So I'll mark out that 2 inches point, and then I'll take my shoulder measurement on my shoulder line. Shoulder divided by 2. I'm so sorry my camera cut off this part. But I'm taking my shoulder measurement on my chest shoulder line. After marking my shoulder measurement on my shoulder line, I came down with 1 inch for shoulder slope. Then I also took that same shoulder measurement on this chest line, which is 8 inches that I'm marking here. And then I'll use my straight ruler to mark a straight line upwards to meet the end of my shoulder slope. And then I also highlighted the chest line and labeled it the chest line. The next is to take our neck measurement. I'm using 3 inches inwards and 3 inches downwards on my shoulder line to get my neck depth and neck width. That's what I just did here. I'll bring down the paper later for you guys to see. I just took my shoulder and my neck measurement. I had no idea that the camera was not showing this part completely. So what I just did there is my shoulder measurement and my neck measurement. Now we'll come down to taking the dart on this dress because it's a princess dart dress. So I'll divide my bust span measurement by 2. My bust span is 8 inches. Bust span is also nipple to nipple measurement. So I'll divide it by 2. I mark 4 inches on my bust line, under bust, half length line. And then I came down for the dart extension with 6 inches. From the waistline downwards, 6 inches. So I also took 4 inches bust span measurement on the end of that 6 inches, and I connected it together with a straight line. Now for our under bust tightening, I'll be using 2 inches to tighten my under bust, and these 2 inches I will not share it equally. I'll put 1.5 on the side and 0.5 inches on the center front. That is because the side front carries the bigger part of the bust. This is me just experimenting this, and it came out well. So you can go ahead and share your darts equally, placing 1 inch on the left, 1 inch on the right. It also works for me. Now, after placing these 2 darts on the under bust, I'll use my curve ruler to curve it upwards to meet the bust point. After connecting it to the bust point, I will also use my straight ruler to mark it straight, to connect it straight down to meet the end of my dart extension. Now we know that we're going to be cutting off these darts. Now you can go ahead and extend your darts to the end of the dress at this point, but I will not be doing that yet. First, let us connect the princess dart. Now on this line that is going upwards to meet the shoulder line, you divide what you have there by 2. After dividing it by 2, I'll come down with 1 inch. If you're very busty, you can come down with 1.5. After coming down with 1 inch, I would also add the 1 inch I came down with, so that when we join it, it will not be short. You can as well measure what you have from this point down to the end of the dart on both sides, so that you know which of them is longer than the other. Make sure both of them are equal on your pattern, so that when you cut, one will not be longer than the other. The next thing now is to get our armhole curve. So I'm coming in at the center of this line that I marked with 0.5, and I'll connect from my shoulder to that 0.5. Also, I'll take my bust measurement on this chest line to get the curve of our armhole. I guess we already know how to do this. This is our basic bodice. But if you don't, just watch closely and see what I'm doing here. So I took my bust measurement on the chest line and I curved my armhole using a different color of pencil, because that's not the one we're following. I will follow this 1 inch I came out with. That's the one I'm marking with my marker. This is the armhole that we'll be using. Now, at this point, we'll take our bust measurement on our bust line, take our waist measurement on our waistline, the half length line, and then take our hip measurements on the hip line. Please, when you take your measurement on the waistline, remember to replace the darts that you have there so that you don't get short. After taking these measurements, we'll go ahead and connect it together with our ruler. Now, on the hip line, take your hip measurement divided by 4, input your answer there. At this point, if you notice, we're not adding seam allowance on our measurement yet, because I'll be adding the seam allowance when I'm cutting on fabric. I'll be keeping this pattern paper for future use. Now, at the full length of my dress, I removed 1 inch from my hip circumference divided by 4. So I took 11 on the hip and I took 10 at the full length of the dress, because it's not supposed to be so tight. If you follow the picture that we're working with, it's not supposed to be too tight. Now the next thing we're going to do is to go upwards and take our side bust dart. We have our center front out and our side front out. Now for our side bust dart, my front waistline is 17 inches and my back waist length is 15.5. So that 1.5 difference is what I'll take off from this side bust. So I'll place my tape on the bust point, come down with the 1.5 and slant it to meet the bust point. Now we know we are going to be cutting off this dart we have on the side bust. Now when you're cutting your center front, your armhole will stop at this point, and then for the side front, you continue from this other end of the armhole. First, I'm going to open up this paper now so that I can close my side bust dart. After closing the side bust dart, you notice it cannot close until you tear open the pattern paper. So I would extend my dart all the way down so that I can tear this part open. Remember our nipple to nipple measurement. I'll extend it all the way down and I'll cut it open to the bust point so that I can close my side bust dart. After closing the side bust dart with my paper tape, I'll go ahead and straighten this line that we have here, because the line is obviously broken. So we're going to use our ruler to straighten it again the way it should be. Now after straightening it, I'll go ahead and cut off the parts that I will not be needing on this paper so that we will have our side front and our center front. At this point, we are done with the front drafting of this dress. We have our center front and our side front out. The next thing we're going to be drafting now is the back. You see how simple it is so far. I've already joined my pattern paper that I'll be drafting the back piece on top. So the first thing I did on this pattern paper, like we did for front, I marked the starting line, which is the shoulder line, and I also came in with 1.5 inches from the beginning of my paper. That will serve as my zipper allowance. Take out your zipper allowance before you start taking your measurement. So on this back piece, the first thing I'll do is my shoulder measurement. I came inwards with my shoulder divided by 2, which is 8, and then I came down with 1 inch for the shoulder slant. Then I marked my bust point for the back, and then I went straight to the back half length, which is 15.5. I will not be needing under bust for this back part. So after marking out the bust point and the half length line for the back, I'll rule it out and label them so that we'll know what they are for. Then from this back waistline, I'll go down with 9 inches like we did for front to get our hip point. I'll label that line the hip line. After that, we'll now take the full length of our dress, which is the 38 we took for the front. So I mark 38 inches from the top of my paper, and then I'll label it the full length. After marking out these lines, we'll go to the upper part of our pattern paper to take out the chest line. So from this bust point, like we did for front, we'll go up with 2 inches to determine the chest line. Now remember, we took our shoulder measurement on the shoulder line. I'll repeat the same shoulder measurement on this chest line and slant it upwards to meet the end of our shoulder slope. Then we'll now take our neck measurement. I used the same 3 inches inwards, but this time, because it's the back, I came down with 1.5 for the back depth. So I'll connect my shoulder and connect the neckline. When you're connecting the neckline, connect it into your zipper allowance. Mind you, all of these measurements we've been taking, they are not from the beginning of your paper. Rather, they are from the beginning of the line at your zipper allowance. So we'll now go ahead and take our bust measurement on this chest line to mark the armhole curve. So I'll curve it upwards to meet the midpoint of this straight line. You don't need to come inwards with 0.5 for the back armhole. The next now is to take our back dart. We are using the same nipple to nipple measurement we used for the front, which is 4 inches for the back as well. So we'll mark 4 inches on the bust point line, on the back waistline, and then for the dart extension as well, we use 6 inches downwards like we did for front. Now I'll come down with 1 inch from my bust point because I don't want my dart to get up to the bust line exactly. I'll use 2 inches for the back dart. So I took the 2 inches on the waistline and I connected it upwards to meet the 1 inch I came down with, and then to meet the 6 inches we took for our dart extension. Now we have our center back and our side back out. So remember, this is a princess dart we're drafting. We're also going to connect this bust point to meet the midpoint of our armhole line so that we can divide the center front and the side front. After that, you take your bust measurement on your bust line, your waist measurement on the waistline. Remember to impute your dart that you took at the waist after taking your measurement. Now I'll connect this line to meet up with my armhole line. And then on the hip line, I'll take my hip measurement divided by 4 and use my curve ruler to connect it to meet the waist line. Remember, on our full length line, we removed 1 inch from our hip measurement. So I'll also put 10 on this full length line and connect it all the way to meet my hip line, and we have our back pattern out already. See how simple it is? Very simple and straight to the point. If you have not subscribed, please remember to subscribe. Now at this point, what we're going to do is to tighten our zipper so that your zip will not be bulging at the back. In order to get this flat laying zip, you're going to come inwards on your waistline at the zipper allowance from the beginning of your paper. Come in by 0.5 and slant it down to the end of the dress and towards the neck of the dress as well. So we're cutting off that 0.5 on that waistline. With that, your zip will lay very flat on your back. So you can decide to either just hold this dart on your dress without cutting it all the way down, or you extend your dart and cut it all the way down. It's completely optional. You can cut on your fabric like this with the way the back pattern is already and just hold the dart for the back. But if you want to cut it down like we did for front, go ahead and cut it down. It's completely optional. So now we have our front pattern paper and our back pattern paper. We're going to move into the next one now to cut out on fabric. So we're going to place our pattern paper on top of our fabric unfold especially the center front. Make sure the center front is placed on the folded part of your paper. Pin down your pattern to your fabric using a pin, and remember to add your sewing allowance. I've added my sewing allowance all around. I marked it out with a chalk, as you can see on your screen, and then I'll go ahead and cut out. You can add 1.5 inch seam allowance, you can add 1 inch or 0.5, depends on the seam allowance you're comfortable working with. So I've cut out my front piece, and then I'll go ahead now to cut the back. Like I said before, you can cut your back directly like this, or you decide to extend your darts and cut out, is your choice. So I've also pinned down my back pattern paper to my fabric, unfold as well, and then I'll cut out. Don't forget to add your seam allowance. Now after cutting out, we have our back piece, the center back, the side back, and then the center front and side front piece. Please remember to add sewing allowance to your fabric when you are cutting. Now in order to save our time, I'll go ahead and cut our lining and our stay, and I'll go ahead and iron, and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have. I've ironed my stay to my fabric. I did not iron stay to the lining, especially the back. I added stay to the lining of the front piece halfway from the shoulder to the under bust, just because I want the bust part to be thick. But the stay did not extend downwards. So we have our front main piece and lining piece, we have our back main piece and lining piece. Before we start joining, the first thing I'm going to do now is to change my neckline. If you want to follow the picture on your right, go ahead and continue with the 3 inches round neckline that we took before. But I want to slant my neckline because I don't want the normal round neck. So to slant this neckline you have on the right on your screen, I'm going to mark out my chest line first. On our pattern paper, remember we have our chest line. So I use my chalk to mark that chest line out on my fabric, and I'll go up from my chest line with 1 inch because I don't want the depth of the neck to come down to the chest exactly. I went up with 1 inch and I connected from my shoulder straight down, and from the other shoulder I'll use my curve ruler to connect to meet that 1 inch point. You can also use your straight ruler to do this connection, but it will give it a very sharp V. But if you use a curve ruler, to make it a bit curvy the way you're seeing on the screen. Now, before I cut out, I'll place my lining right sides facing each other on top, because if you cut it separately, the V might end up coming to the left on the lining while the V is on the right on the main fabric. You end up wasting your fabric. So if you're working with an asymmetric neckline, cut your lining and your main fabric together, right sides facing each other, so that you get the same thing. Now, what I did on this lining is to repeat everything I did for the main fabric so that I can be seeing it, and then I cut it out. Now we can use it to turn it right sides facing each other. So after getting out this neckline, now the next thing I'm going to do is to place the side front to the center front and join together. So I'll take it to the sewing machine, join this side front to the center front, the two of them, and then I'll do the same thing on the lining of the front piece, and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have. I've joined my two side fronts to the center front for both lining and main piece. We'll be ironing out this seam later, but first let us join the back as well, like we did for front. So I will introduce the back piece, the center back and the side back, both the lining and the main fabric. I'll go ahead and join the two side back to the two center back as well, and then I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have. We have two pieces of the back, two pieces for lining and two pieces for the main fabric. We've joined our side back to the center back. The next thing now is to go ahead and iron the seams, both for lining and main fabric. If you're not used to ironing your seams, please make it a habit. It makes your work very, very neat. So open up your seams, all of the stitches that we just made, open it up and give it a very good press. When you get to the bust point part, please use your bust ham so that you don't flatten out the bust. Now this is what we have. I've ironed all of the seams that we made, both the front and the back, both the lining and the main fabric, and this is what we have. You see how neat it's coming out already. The next thing now is to turn with our lining. We'll go ahead and turn the main fabric with our lining, and the first part we're going to be turning is the neck line. So I'll place the back piece right sides facing each other like this and stitch on the neck part. I'll do the same thing for the front. I'll place them together right sides facing each other and I'll stitch on the neckline. Remember to top stitch on your lining when you're done. Now this is what we have. I've stitched the neckline. I also top stitched on the lining. So now you flip it over and give it a very good press as well. I also did the same thing for the front piece. Now for the front piece, before we flip it over to iron, remember to give it a very good notch, because you know we know it's curvy. So we are going to notch it so that it doesn't come out puffy on the right side of the fabric. So after notching it, be careful when you're notching so that you don't tear your dress. So after notching, flip it over to the right side and iron. Now this is what we have for both the front and the back. You see how the dress is coming out already. The next thing we're going to do now is to place it right sides facing each other and turn our shoulder. We're not going to be stitching the shoulder straight because it will come out rough. So place it right side facing each other like this and take the lining of the back piece to turn the shoulder. As you see me arranging on the screen, when you place it together, use the lining of the back piece to turn it. Place it like this. Take the lining and flip it to the other side and stitch. You do the same thing on both sides. After arranging, I'll hold it down with a pin before I'll take it to the sewing machine to stitch the shoulder. And after stitching, I'll be right back to show you guys how it looks. Now this is what we have for the shoulder that we just turned. Before you flip it to the right side, give it a notch, like cut off the thick part you have at the beginning. But first, before you cut it off, check if it is well arranged, because if it's not properly arranged, lose it and stitch it again. But if you see that it's well arranged, notch it and flip it to the right side, and this is what you're going to have. The next thing we're going to do after turning our shoulder now is to close down the two sides. And for us to close down the two sides, you have to flip this fabric to the wrong side of the dress, which is the lining side. So after arranging it like this, we are going to be taking our measurements first before we will go and close it down on the sides. Now for us to take our measurements, as you see me doing on the screen, I'm using my pin to hold down the zipper allowance. Remember when I was cutting, I cut 1.5 zipper allowance. So this depends on the zipper allowance that you took. Pin down your zipper allowance so that you can take your body measurements. Now as you can see, I'm taking my measurements on the back side of the dress. With the zipper allowance pinned, I placed my tape on the armhole with the bust line part and measured what I have there. I have 21 and my bust divided by 2 is supposed to be 19, which means I have 1 inch on both sides to use and join. Now I'll mark that point and come down to the waistline. Now I'll place my tape on the waistline and divide my waist by 2 inches. I have 18 here instead of 15. So which means I have 1.5 inch to stitch on the waistline. So I'll come inward with 1.5 and mark and connect it to meet the bust line bust measurement that we took before. Now we'll now take 9 inches downwards from that waist to get the hip point. After marking that 9 inch, I'll take my measurement on this hip point, my hip measurement divided by 2. So when we're cutting, my hip measurement divided by 2 is 22. So, and as you can see, I have 23, which means at this hip part, I have only half an inch to stitch on the sides. So make sure you take your body measurement before you go and stitch down the 2 sides of your dress. But now that we're done with the body measurement, the first thing we're going to do before stitching down is to close down the hem. We have not closed the down part of our dress. So place it right sides facing each other like this, the lining facing the good side of the fabric, and stitch it down. Do this on both the front and the back before you go ahead and close the sides. And now for the closing of these sides, there are 2 different ways to close these sides. If you don't want to weave your dress, go ahead and close it lining to lining and fabric to fabric. As you see me holding on your screen, place the 2 fabrics together like this, which means you take all that measurements on this side so that you'll be seeing where you are stitching on top. So stitch your lining together, stitch your main fabric together. When you turn it over, it will look like this shoulder part that we stitched before. With that, you have a very neat finishing on the inside. But this particular dress, I want to weave it intentionally. So I am not doing the closed turning. Now this is what we have. I've stitched down the 2 sides following my measurements, and then I also closed down the hem of the dress. So now we have just the back part open, which we held down with pin. The back part that will be fixing our zipper. So before we fix our zipper, we are going to do the pearl detailing we have on the front of this dress first before we close down this zipper. So now I'll open up my pins. I'll remove the pins from the fabric and then open it out so that we can cut out the black pieces that we'll be using to get those pearl designs that we have on the dress. So now when you open up your dress like this, on the front part, you're going to place your tape on your waist so that you know where these designs will start from. Now after getting out your waist, you come down a little bit from your waist and start placing this design. You can go ahead and use whatever item you have in your house that can give you a circle like this. Go ahead and use it to get different sizes of circle. I'm using my bust ham, my pin cushion, and anything I have that can, even my paper tape. As long as it is round, it will give you this round design. Go ahead and mark out this round design on your dress, the front part of your dress. So after marking it out, before we go ahead and cut out the black fabric that we'll be placing on top. Like I said before, cut out different sizes. You can do exact same thing you're seeing on your screen. You can go ahead and also bring out your own preferred sizes, and design is completely your choice. So now this is the black fabric that I'll be cutting out and placing on top of these circles that I marked. We'll also use the same items, the same objects that we used to get out the circles. We will also cut out this black on them so that it will be the same size. So now go ahead and cut out the number of circles I have on my dress. I'll cut them out on this black fabric as well. I've ironed my stay to this black fabric so that it will gum when I add my hemming gum. That's why I added stay. Now I have all my black pieces in different sizes out, and this is the hemming gum. I also cut them out in circles. Then I'll place the hemming gum on top of the circles, then place the black fabric on top, and then I'll give it a very good press. We are not stitching this on top of this dress. No, we'll iron it with our hemming gum. You might be wondering, what if it falls off? It will not fall off because we are going to use our needle and thread to tack the pearls on top. So that will hold down these black pieces. Now, after placing these black pieces under your hemming gum, go ahead and give it a very good press, and your fabric, the black fabric, will stay intact. They will stay on top of the dress that you've made. So now you see the inside is very neat and the outside has been gummed. Now I'll introduce my needle and my thread. You can go ahead and use a normal sewing thread or a transparent thread. Whichever works for you is fine. Now I have two sizes of pearls here. I have the bigger size and the medium size, and I have two types of threads here. You can use the fabric thread or the transparent thread. I will use my fabric thread because it's easier for me to tie when I want to tie. Now we'll go ahead and start beading these pearls to this circle. First of all, after tying your thread at the end, place it inside your fabric and bring it out so that it will be on top. The tied part will be on top of this black fabric, as you can see. Please, when you're placing your needle inside your fabric, do not let it pick the lining, because whatever you're doing here, do not let it get to the lining of your dress. The inside has to be very neat. So now you place it, bring it out, put your pearls in it, then put it back again into the fabric and bring it out. This time it passes the black fabric and passes the Ankara fabric, but it doesn't get to the lining. Then you bring it outside again, place another pearls, take it inward again. Now when you're taking it inward, make sure they are very close to each other. Make sure they are not too close so that it will not be dangling, and make sure they are not too distant so that there will not be space in between each pearls. So you can slow down this video if you feel like it's too fast, so that you watch closely and see how I'm placing my needle inside of my fabric and how I'm gently arranging the pearls so that they will be as close as possible. So now you bring it out on the other side you want the next pearl to start from before you place the pearl into the needle. So I would speed this video up because obviously we cannot bead everything on camera. It's not a one-day thing. This video will be too long. So I'm just slowing down this part so that we'll see how I did this particular one before I go ahead and speed up the rest of the beadwork, and I'll do some outside the camera. Then I'll be right back to show you guys. Now before I speed up this video, if you notice, one of my hand went into the fabric just to be sure I did not mistakenly pick my lining. You can even do this before turning with your lining, but I just decided to do this at this point to teach you that you can actually do it even after lining your dress. So this hand I'm placing inside is to be sure that my lining is separate from the fabric so that I don't mistakenly stitch it while I'm fixing the pearls. So make sure you're not picking on your lining. The needle goes into the black fabric through the Ankara and back up again. Do not let it pick the lining. So I'll speed this video up now and finish up the pearls, and then I'll do the rest of the pearls outside the camera because this pearls part is time taking. So I'll do just this one on camera. I'll speed it up a bit till I get to the end because I want to show you how to tie it when you finish. Also, if your thread gets finished in the middle of fixing your pearl, maybe you've not gotten to the end and your thread is finished, you need to put another thread. What you do not let it finish completely. Even if it's small remaining, get another needle, tie it and bring it out the same way you started this one, and then tie that new needle to what is remaining from your previous needle that is almost finished. So when you tie it, you can now continue from where you stopped. That is for cases when your thread finish before you finish with the circle. Now I want us to get to the end of this round one so that you see how I tie it. Now for this last one, when you place your pearl inside, take your needle through the first pair you started with so that there will not be space to show this is where you started or this is where you ended. So after placing your last pearl, the needle will now be passed through the first pearl you started with so that it will go all round and smooth like this. There's no beginning, there's no end, there's no obvious points stating that this is where it ended or not. So now I'm going to take my needle inwards the way I placed my hand inside the fabric like this. Now you can tie it in between your lining Or if you've turned already, maybe you have turned the neck, you've turned it down, there's no point to tie in between your lining and your fabric on the inside. You can now bring it out to this outside and tie, so that this will be the only thread out. But if you have not closed completely, please tie it in between your lining and your main fabric. So this is what we have for this first circle that we just did. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest off camera because I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. So now we'll go ahead to the next part of this tutorial, which is the fixing of our zipper and our sleeve to this dress. Now for the zipper, we're going to flip our dress to the wrong side and arrange our zipper allowance like we did before using pin. Then you hold it down with your pin and then you place your zipper on your dress like this. If you don't know how to fix a zipper, registration is on for our beginners course where we'll teach you all these basic stuffs. Now place your zipper facing the right side and sew. So for the sleeve as well, we're going to attach the sleeve to the sleeve parts, to our armhole part of this dress. Now for the sleeve, is a bell sleeve. It's not a tight sleeve, it's a straight bell sleeve. I've already cut out the bell sleeve. If you don't know how to cut a bell sleeve, let us know in the comment section if we'll be adding you to our beginners masterclass that is currently on or not. So for this bell sleeve, it's very easy. Just go ahead and cut out the full length of your sleeve, that your desired length, and then for the hem I used 11 inches. You can go ahead and use 15, depends on how wide you want the sleeve to be. I don't want this one to be too wide. And for the upper part, I also took my armhole measurement that we used when we were drafting. So now I'll go ahead and attach my sleeves to the dress and attach the zipper as well. Now then I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have. Our dress is almost ready. We've attached our sleeve. I also folded the hem of my sleeves, and then we've also attached our zipper. See how flat the zipper is laid? I've gone ahead to iron all of my seams that I made for this back piece. So this is the zipper that is fixed already, and then our sleeves are fixed. The remaining thing now is to finish up with the fixing of the pearls on these black channels that we've created for the pearls. So I'll go ahead and do that and I'll be right back. Thank you so much for watching to this point. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and then turn on your notification bell because we post tutorials every week. Now I've finished with the fixing of the pearls, and this is the beautiful dress that we just made. It's so fine, guys. You can see that the inside is very neat. We did not pick our lining when we were fixing our pearls. So you can use Ankara or plain fabric for this dress. It's so fine. Thank you so much for watching to this point. We've come to the end of this video. Here is the result of the dress that we just made. I want to say a big thank you to all of our subscribers and our returning viewers. If you're new here, please click the subscribe button, like and share this video, and I'll see you in our next tutorial. Bye.